They sang the songs that defined a decade. Strangers now sing along at every wedding, every throwback playlist, every commercial, and most of them never saw a fair cut of what those songs made. This is the story of 12 one-hit wonders who gave the industry immortal records and got left holding nothing but the memory. Number 1. Musical Youth, Pass the Dutchie. 4 Birmingham schoolboys, the youngest just 11 years old, became the first reggae act to top the UK charts and crack the American top 10. Pass the Dutchie sold in the millions worldwide in 1982. And by most accounts, the children who made it happen barely touched the money. Musical youth were minors, so every contract and royalty statement ran through adults' managers, label executives, and guardians who controlled the purse strings. The song itself was an adaptation of a Jamaican dancehall track, reworked with new lyrics and new writing credits, a common industry move that often left the youngest performers with the smallest slice of a very large pie. The band toured relentlessly, appeared on television across 3 continents, and became a genuine cultural phenomenon. Michael Jackson reportedly requested to meet them. But the machinery behind global childhood stardom wasn't built to protect children. It was built to extract value from them quickly, before the moment passed and the next novelty act came along. Within a few years, the hits stopped. The band members were teenagers again with no platform. And several later described financial struggles that stood in stark contrast to the tens of millions the record had generated for everyone standing around them. One member's life spiraled into legal trouble, entangled with the very substance their biggest hit was named for. A bitter footnote to a song that once made the whole world dance. It's one of pop history's most uncomfortable ironies. A song about a shared joint became a cautionary tale about who profits when children make hits for adults. On the left-hand side. Number 2. Timex Social Club, Rumors. Rumors was the biggest selling single of 1986. 3.5 million copies. A number 1 R&B smash that dominated radio for the better part of a year. And the fight over who owned it destroyed the group that made it. The song began as a teenage demo, written by group members Marcus Thompson, Michael Marshall, and Alex Hill on a 4-track cassette rig in an Oakland apartment. Years before anyone in the industry took them seriously. Producer Jay King heard it, funded the professional session, and built it into a phenomenon under his own independent label. Once the checks started rolling in, the cracks showed fast. A dispute erupted over the publishing rights to the song itself, who actually controlled the copyright. And therefore, who got paid every time it played on the radio or in a club. At the same time, the group quietly signed with a rival label without telling King. And the watchmaker Timex sent a legal warning demanding they drop its name entirely, forcing a rebrand at the worst possible moment. King, furious at being cut out, took the leftover material he'd been sitting on and built an entirely new act around it. Club Nouveau. That group would go on to have an even bigger hit with a cover of Lean on Me, while the original Timex Social Club members, the ones who'd actually written Rumors, watched their own moment get absorbed into somebody else's success story, undone not by fading popularity, but by a fight over who really owned the record everyone was dancing to.
Here's something most people don't realize. Only about 10% of you watching will hit subscribe. The other 90% just watch and move on. You made it this far, so you're clearly not most people. Hit subscribe. Back to the countdown.
Number 3. Colonel Abrams, Trapped. Trapped is one of the most sampled, most influential dancehall records of the entire decade. a club and R&B crossover smash in 1985 that helped define the sound of house music before house music even had a name. Colonel Abrams became a star off the back of it, a voice DJs treated as sacred text. Within a few years, his label had dropped him, and by the final years of his life, he was reportedly living in a homeless shelter in New York City. Abrams signed to MCA at a moment when dance-oriented black artists were routinely funneled into deals that prioritized the label's control over the master recordings and the artist's long-term songwriting income, leaving the performer with a fraction of the upside their own work generated. Trapped became a foundational text for house and techno producers for decades afterwards, sampled, remixed, reissued, and referenced across genres, generating a steady stream of licensing and royalty revenue for rights holders that, by most accounts, was not the artist himself. Abrams continued performing and recording into the 2000s, chasing the sound he'd helped invent, but never came close to matching the reach of his signature hit. Interviews from the final years of his life painted a stark picture. A man whose voice shaped an entire genre, struggling with health problems and housing insecurity, while his most famous 4 minutes kept quietly earning money for somebody else's ledger. He passed away in 2016. The industry mourned him as an underground pioneer. Few tributes mentioned who'd actually been cashing the checks all those years. Number 4. Nucleus. Jam on it. Jam on it, jam on it. If you grew up anywhere near a boombox in 1984, you know the words before you even try to remember them. Jam on It became one of the defining electro-funk records of the decade. A foundational text for hip-hop DJs and breakdancers, sampled and referenced for generations after its release. And the Brooklyn group that made it never came close to replicating its commercial reach. Nucleus operated in the Wild West era of early 80s electro and hip-hop adjacent R&B, a scene where independent labels moved fast. Contracts were thin, and the paperwork around ownership often mattered less to the people signing it than the sheer thrill of finally getting a record pressed and played on the radio. That arrangement tended to favor whoever ran the label, not the artists who actually wrote and performed the material night after night. Jam on It would go on to soundtrack breakdancing scenes in major films, get sampled by later generations of hip-hop and dance producers, and become a permanent fixture of old-school compilations, sold and streamed for decades. All of it generating licensing income long after the group itself had faded from view. Nucleus never landed another hit of comparable size, and by most accounts, saw only a fraction of the song's long financial tail. It's a familiar shape in early 80s black music. A record so foundational, it shaped an entire culture's sound, made by artists treated as replaceable the moment the single stopped climbing the charts and moving units in stores. Number 5. Shannon. Let the Music Play. Let the Music Play didn't just chart in 1983, it created a genre. Freestyle music, the electro-Latin sound that would dominate dance floors for the rest of the decade, effectively begins with this single record. Shannon became the voice that launched an entire movement. A sound that echoed out of clubs and boomboxes across every major American city that summer. The songwriters and producers behind the track became industry legends. Shannon herself never saw another hit at that scale again. The song was written and produced by Chris Barbosa and Mark Liggett, whose names would go on to define the freestyle sound across dozens of other acts throughout the decade. Shannon, as the vocalist, occupied the position so many featured singers of the era did the face and voice of the record, the person fans associated with the sound, but not necessarily a stakeholder in its publishing or its long-term earnings. That distinction mattered enormously once "Let the Music Play" became a foundational sample and reference point for decades of dance and hip-hop music that followed it. Every remix, every interpolation, every time that unmistakable bass line echoed through a later generation's hit. Money moved through the industry, and by most accounts, the bulk of it moved toward the writers and producers, not the woman whose voice made the record unforgettable in the first place. Shannon kept recording into the 90s and beyond. Respected as a foundational voice of freestyle, but never again touched the impact of those first 3 minutes that changed dance music forever. Number 6. Force MD's, Tender Love. Before it belonged to the Force MDs, Tender Love belonged to two of the most powerful songwriters in the business, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Fresh off building Janet Jackson's entire career, the Force MDs, a Staten Island vocal group with roots in doo-wop harmony and street corner hip-hop, were brought in to perform it for the film Crush Groove. It became their signature hit, the song people still remember them for decades later. It was never, in any meaningful sense, their song, and the group knew it, even while they were living inside its success. This was standard practice for vocal groups navigating the mid-80s crossover between R&B and hip-hop adjacent soundtracks. Outside writer-producers supplied the material, the group supplied the voices, the harmonies, and the image. And the publishing stayed exactly where the industry had always kept it, with the writers, not the singers who brought it to life on stage every night. Tender Love became a slow jam standard, covered and sampled for decades across genres. One of the most enduring ballads to come out of the entire Crush Groove soundtrack. The Force MDs rode it to their only major crossover hit, then watched subsequent releases fail to connect at the same level. The group's story includes real tragedy beyond the business side. Members later dealt with serious health struggles, but the financial arc is a familiar one in this era. A vocal group whose talent made someone else's song immortal, while the group itself never controlled the asset that made them famous in the first place. Number 7. Ready for the World, Oh Sheila. For 3 weeks in 1985, Oh Sheila was the #1 song in America, a Prince-indebted funk-pop smash from a Flint, Michigan group that seemed poised to become the next great R&B act of the decade. It didn't happen that way, and the group's own account of their business dealings suggests they understood exactly why. Long before the public did. Ready for the World signed to MCA. At a moment when the label was aggressively building a roster of Prince-adjacent funk acts to chase a proven commercial formula. And by multiple members' later accounts, the deal structure left the band with far less creative and financial control than the size of their hit would ever suggest. Oh Sheila topped the pop and R&B charts simultaneously, an enormous commercial win for the label. and an unforgettable cultural moment for the group, one that briefly made them the biggest new act in the country. They followed it with more hits over the next 2 years, but internal accounts describe growing frustration over money, credit, and ownership that eventually fractured the lineup from the inside out. By the end of the decade, the group had splintered, chasing solo careers and lawsuits instead of follow-up hits and album cycles. It's a pattern that shows up again and again in this era. A label moves fast to capitalize on a sound, signs young black artists to deals engineered to protect the company's upside, and moves on the moment the charts cool off, regardless of what's left behind for the people who made the record a hit. Number 8. Gwen Guthrie, Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent. Gwen Guthrie was not a newcomer when Ain't Nothing Going On But the Rent became a hit in 1986. She'd already spent a decade as one of the most in-demand background singers and songwriters in the business, writing for Aretha Franklin and Ben E. King, among many others, before ever stepping into the spotlight herself. And even with that pedigree, her signature solo hit became a case study in how little that experience actually protected her from an industry built to extract, not reward. By the time Rent broke through, Guthrie had spent years watching other artists build careers on songs she'd helped create, often for flat session fees rather than ongoing royalties, a standard arrangement for background vocalists and staff writers. Throughout the 70s and 80s, that left the biggest financial upside with the credited headline artist and the label, not the people actually shaping the sound in the room. Her solo breakthrough finally put her own name on the marquee. But by most accounts, the commercial machinery around her deal mirrored the same imbalance she'd spent a decade working inside. Heavy label control over rights, modest returns for the artist relative to the song's earning power over time. Rent remains a genre-defining dance and R&B record decades later, still played in clubs and sampled by new artists every year. Guthrie passed away in 1999, remembered by industry insiders and fellow songwriters as one of the most talented and least compensated voices of her generation, a writer's writer who rarely got her own due credit. Number 9. Sybil, Falling in Love, UHOH. Sybil Lynch had already spent years grinding through the dance music underground before Falling in Love, broke through in 1989, a freestyle soul crossover that finally put her name on the map. After a decade of near misses and session work, the record was a genuine hit, climbing dance and R&B charts alike. The financial structure behind it, by most accounts common to the freestyle and dance scenes of the era, was never built to make Sybil rich. Freestyle and dance R&B records in the late 80s were frequently producer-driven projects.
1986.
A producer, or small independent label, would write and build the track from scratch, then bring in a vocalist to perform it, sometimes for a modest flat session fee, rather than a meaningful ownership stake in the master recording or the underlying publishing rights. Sybil's voice carried the record to the top of the dance charts and into R&B radio rotation nationwide. But the songwriting and production credits, and the revenue that followed them for years afterward, sat almost entirely with the people behind the boards, not the woman fans actually fell in love with. She continued recording and performing for years afterward, respected within the freestyle community, as one of its defining and most technically gifted voices, but she never quite replicated the commercial peak of that one record. It's a story that repeats across the entire freestyle genre of the late 80s, a scene built almost entirely on the talent of women vocalists, run almost entirely by men, who kept the publishing for themselves. Number 10. Cheryl Pepsi I. Riley, Thanks for My Child. Thanks for My Child was an unusual hit for 1988. A tender, specific ballad about single motherhood that resonated deeply with listeners and carried Cheryl Pepsi I. Riley to the top of the R&B charts almost overnight. It also arrived through a familiar industry pipeline. Written not by Riley herself, but by outside songwriters, with Riley brought in purely as the voice to deliver it to the world and sell it to an audience hungry for something real. This was the standard model for many female R&B vocalists of the late 80s, who came up through background singing and session work, rather than as singer-songwriters. In their own right, a producer or writing team built the song from the ground up, then selected a voice to carry it, and the resulting publishing income flowed to the credited writers rather than the performer, whose interpretation actually made the record connect with listeners everywhere. Riley's version of Thanks for My Child became widely regarded as the definitive one. Covered and referenced by other artists for years afterward, but by most accounts the songwriting royalties that followed sat almost entirely outside her control for the rest of her career. She continued performing and recording into the 90s, respected as one of the era's most emotionally direct vocalists, but never returned to the commercial heights of that first hit, another example of a singer whose voice defined a song's legacy, while someone else's name sat quietly on the copyright, collecting every check that followed for decades. Number 11. Melissa Morgan, Do Me Baby. Melissa Morgan's 1986 cover of Prince's Do Me Baby became a defining slow jam of the decade. A number one R&B hit that many listeners assumed, understandably, was an original composition written specifically for her. It wasn't. And that single fact tells you almost everything you need to know about who actually profited from its success in the years that followed its release. Cover versions occupy a particular trap in the music business. The performing artist can turn in a career-defining vocal performance, reshape a song's entire identity, make it unmistakably their own in the ears of an entire generation of listeners, and still see the songwriting royalties flow entirely to the original writer. In this case, that meant Prince, who retained full publishing on a composition he hadn't even released as his own single at the time it became a hit for someone else. Morgan's version outsold and outcharted Prince's own recording in the R&B market, becoming the version most associated with the song for an entire generation, and none of that commercial reality changed who legally owned the underlying composition or collected the writer's share of every sale. She built a respected career afterward, including further hits and steady industry recognition among her peers. But Do Me Baby remains the clearest example on this entire list of a simple, brutal industry math problem. Performance can make a song immortal in the minds of an audience, while ownership alone decides who actually gets paid for that immortality, year after year, long after the song stops charting.
want you so bad.
Number 12. Chico DeBarge, Talk to Me. Chico DeBarge had a famous surname and a genuine solo hit in 1986 with Talk to Me. A smooth, self-assured R&B single that should have launched a long solo career, independent of his family's complicated Motown legacy. Instead, it became a cautionary footnote, and by most accounts, control over the business side of that early success was never really in his hands to begin with. Even as the song climbed the charts, DeBarge was a teenager, navigating a business built entirely by adults around him. Signed to a major label at a moment when the DeBarge family name carried both opportunity and baggage from years of complicated Motown-era contracts that had already affected his siblings' careers before his own even began in earnest. Talk to Me hit the R&B top 10 and built real momentum toward a lasting solo career. But legal trouble derailed his trajectory almost immediately afterward, and by the time he re-emerged years later, the industry momentum from that first hit had long since evaporated, along with much of the financial upside that should have followed a genuine hit record. It's a fitting closer for this list. 11 other artists lost control of their songs to producers, labels, and songwriting teams built to outlast every one of them. Chico DeBarge lost his moment to a system that had already extracted most of the value from his family's talent before he ever got his own real turn at the microphone. The DeBarge name, opening doors that the DeBarge business deals quietly closed behind him. 12 hits. 12 names everyone still recognizes, and in almost every case, the money kept flowing long after the charts moved on. Just never toward the people who made you fall in love with the song in the first place. If this kind of story matters to you, the next one is waiting. Subscribe, because the industry buried 100 more like this one.